MultiAsian.Church, Chapter 3, Overview of Asian American Christianity. We've already seen how diverse the Asian American demographic is ethnically and culturally. In a similar fashion, Asian Americans are very diverse religiously and spiritually as well. The religious affiliation of Asian Americans span a wide spectrum, as implied by the title of the Pew Report, Asian Americans, A Mosaic of Faiths. Alex, my own. While there's much in the report about many other religions, this chapter takes a closer look at the Asian American Christianity. The Pew Report cites that the overall survey shows 42% of Asian Americans self-identify as Christian, that is 22% Protestant and 19% Catholic. Note that these survey results also indicate that 75% of U.S. general public self-identify as Christian. When you look at the numbers across ethnic lines, you'll notice something very different for each ethnic group. As the chart illustrates, the most churched are Filipino Americans and Korean Americans, with a majority of Filipino Americans being Catholic, while a majority of Korean Americans being Protestant. Furthermore, the Pew Report compares and contrasts the receptivity of Christianity by an Asian ethnic group in America versus Asian country of origin. These proportions generally reflect the religious composition of each group's country of origin. The Philippines, for example, is heavily Catholic. In some cases, however, the percentage of Christians among Asian American subgroups is much higher than in their ancestral lands. For example, 31% of the Chinese Americans surveyed are Christians. The vast majority, though not all, of this group come from mainland China, where Christians generally are estimated to constitute about 5% of the total population. Similarly, 18% of Indian Americans identify as Christians, though only about 3% of India's total population is estimated to be Christian. The higher percentage of Christians are a result of the disproportionate number of Christians who choose to migrate to the United States, and may also reflect religious switching by immigrants. Let's visualize these numbers as a side-by-side comparison of the Christian with Protestant and Catholic population in the Asian country of origin versus in the United States for the 6 largest Asian American ethnic groups. See the chart, comparison of Christian population Asia versus America. Notice the phenomena that almost every Asian ethnic group has a much higher percentage of Christians in America than in their corresponding Asian country of origin. Why might this be? It could be attributed to being in a country where Christianity has had a stronger influence historically, along with the creative evangelistic methods developed in America's free market environment. I've also heard this tendency as an indicator that Asians in America are more receptive to the gospel. When people relocate to a new country, that disruption is a huge opportunity for changes in many areas, including one's spirituality and religious affiliation. It should also be noted that most, if not all, Asian American churches are very intentional at providing practical ministries and services to the Asian immigrants. These good deeds open the hearts of immigrants to the good news too. What does all this mean? A couple of caveats to keep in mind. First, there are distinctly unique narratives and timelines when each Asian ethnic group immigrated to the United States. This affects each group's rate of assimilation into American culture, particularly for the next generation. Second, these statistics are useful as a point of reference that shows a big picture of Asian American Christians like an impressionistic painting with broad paintbrushes. We can see different Asian ethnicities' response to the gospel and differences between Asians in Asia versus Asians in America. However, these statistics are not to be used as a detailed roadmap or as a photograph to recognize individual faces. There are numerous differences for each Asian ethnicity, just as there are many differences between individuals. In other words, use these statistics to get some basic understanding about different Asian ethnicities, but don't overgeneralize or use these statistics against people by stereotyping. What we have learned here is a little bit more, definitely not everything, about each Asian American culture. Have some knowledge is better than ignorance. As Asian American Christians come to faith, they also come together and organize into churches. These churches provide a tangible expression of their Christian faith that is particularly meaningful for them according to their cultural value for group-oriented cohesion. Through available research, here are the estimated numbers of ethnic Asian churches in the U.S. See the chart, ethnic Asian churches in the U.S. This estimate of 9,045 ethnic Asian American churches include over 4,600 Korean and over 1,600 Chinese churches. While exact numbers of Asian American churches are difficult to obtain, having estimates does provide some data to strategize ministry. It is reasonable to say that a majority of these ethnic churches have worship services only in their respective Asian language, with a minority of them also having an English ministry by necessity of ministering to the children of the immigrant families. I've been exhorted by Asian pastors that one should use the term ethnic Asian church instead of immigrant Asian church when referring to a church that is primarily reaching first-generation Asian Americans. Incidentally, these estimates for the total number of Protestant ethnic Asian churches don't quite add up. An average church is usually under 100 people in size, so 9,000 ethnic churches would mean around 900,000 people. That is far short of the 4 million people that supposedly make up 22% of Asian American Protestants, as surveys have indicated. This could imply a number of things. Perhaps Asian Americans, like non-Asian Americans, default their religious affiliation to Christianity when responding to surveys in order to fit in. I say it's unlikely that so many Asian Americans are attending non-Asian or multi-ethnic churches. It also could be that thousands of ethnic Asian churches are unaccounted for, but I think that's less likely. There are also some Christians that belong to house churches that would not be counted with the formally organized churches. While I could speculate and come up with more reasons to try to explain why these numbers don't fit together, I think it's better to recognize the limitation of surveys and statistics as a general point of reference for overall trends. They're not a reliably accurate means for measuring such an intangible thing as people's religious affiliations. What this does say is, we need a lot more churches to reach this fast-growing demographic of Asian Americans. In the next chapter, we'll describe the common models of Asian American churches and how church governance is structured and organized for effective ministry.